5 reasons why pain or symptom flares occur. Hi everyone, welcome back to yet another video. Today we're discussing a dreaded topic, no one likes to discuss it, pain or symptom flares. Now, when we have a pain or physical symptom flare, we panic, we get fearful, we get frustrated. We're really wondering, why is this taking place and when is it gonna go away? Now, I want to be clear, I've never seen someone recover using a mind-body approach by treating their brain and nervous system to reduce or eliminate their chronic symptoms. I've never seen one person recover once without having some bumps in the road, without having some flares take place. So if you're watching this and you're currently going through a flare, I do empathize with you, but please know that they are very normal. They're gonna occur, they are part of this process. Now, an important aspect to actually dealing with our chronic pain and symptom flares, learning something from them, making sure that we can mitigate them in the future, is understanding why they're occurring. And so in this video, I'm going to discuss 5 different reasons why pain or symptom flares take place. So let's dive into it. Number 1, extinction bursts. Over time, after you've had acute pain or symptoms, your brain starts to learn the pain or physical symptoms. Your brain and nervous system actually changes, and it changes in a way that reinforces chronic pain. And chronic pain, chronic symptoms, they become a reinforced behavior in the brain. I want to say that again, because it's really important you understand this. And sometimes we have these random flares that come out of nowhere. We can't really figure out a good reason. And often what's occurring is an extinction burst. And so over time, our brain can unlearn it, but it is going to be a bumpy road as it does this, because a reinforced behavior does not go down without a fight. So first, let me discuss what an extinction burst is and how we discovered this scientifically. So there was a researcher named Schubiner, and he did experiments on rats. And so what he taught rats to do in one of his experiments was, there was a food pellet machine, and he basically taught the rats to hit the lever and a piece of food would come out. Pretty straightforward. Over time, it became a reinforced behavior. The rat learned, if I hit the lever, a piece of food comes out. And so it becomes reinforced in the brain over and over and over again. This is similar to our chronic pain or chronic symptoms. Fear, preoccupation, dysregulation reinforces to the brain that we should continue to produce pain or physical symptoms. So back to the rats. In one of his experiments, Skinner's experiment went messy. It fell apart a bit. And so what took place is the rat food pellet machine got jammed. It got jammed, so all of a sudden the rats were hitting the lever, but no food was coming out. Now at first, they would frantically hit the lever over and over and over again, trying to get food to come out, but it wasn't working. Over time, the behavior started to become extinct because hitting the lever was no longer being reinforced by food pellets. So hours would go by, they would stop hitting it as often, but then all of a sudden out of nowhere, the rat would go back to the lever and frantically hit it again. This is called an extinction burst, because as the behavior of hitting the lever was becoming extinct and it wasn't being reinforced anymore, the behavior would fade. So as the behavior was becoming extinct, all of a sudden there would be this burst of the behavior again. And we see this with chronic pain and symptoms. Extinction bursts are actually a really good sign. It means that you're on the right path. It means that your chronic pain, chronic fatigue, chronic dizziness, or whatever other symptom you have is starting to become extinct. And that's a great thing. We want that. But all of a sudden, you'll get these extinction bursts taking place. Now, when I was recovering, I had many extinction bursts. And, if I could go back, I wish I had the knowledge that I do now about why that was taking place, hence why I'm discussing them. So it's just important to know if your symptoms all of a sudden randomly have this big flare, you can't find an emotional trigger, a psychological trigger, a physical trigger, it's likely an extinction burst. And if we keep following a mind-body approach, we lower the dysregulation, the fear, the frustration, we utilize all the strategies that I discuss on this channel, we will make it through that flare, and the flare will come down, and our progress will continue to take place. So there is good news in all of this. Extinction bursts are a good sign, and you can overcome them. Now, after you've healed, you're likely not going to have extinction bursts. Like, I've been healed for many years. I'm not going to have an extinction burst at this time. They're really normal when we're first healing. And especially even in that first year I recovered, it was really common for me to have these now and then. But over time, my brain has really unlearned it. So now if I have a pain or symptom flare take place, it's not an extinction burst, and it's probably due to one of the other 4 elements that I'm about to discuss. So let's dive into the next 4. Number 2, perceived injury. This is a really common reason why pain or symptom flares happen. Maybe you've been using a mind-body approach for a while, and the good news is you might be less fearful to start using your body. Maybe you're walking more, maybe you're lifting weights, maybe you're even running, or maybe you're just starting to use your arms again. As we start to use our body again, it's a great reward that this mind-body approach can give us. The unfortunate part is we still have a lot of fear often, a lot of dysregulation about any sensation in our body, and we have a lot of fear and dysregulation about using our body. So when I was recovering, I've explained on this channel, I was not really able to walk. I mean, a couple of minutes. So that was one of the first things I did. And then I started to use my arms more. And over a number of months, all of a sudden, I was at the gym again. I was able to start to lift some light weights. Now, at some point in the first few months of me starting to use my body again, I started to deadlift. And deadlifts were something that I was really scared of because my back I viewed as fragile for so long. And I remember I was probably a week into doing deadlifts every couple of days, like really lightweight, nothing major. And about a week or so in, I did a deadlift and I felt some sensation in my back. It wasn't horrible, but there was a little pinch. And what followed is I panicked. I stopped working out immediately. I went home, I lied down, and I was really scared. And I had this idea that I injured myself. I didn't actually injure myself. I know at this point that I did not, but there was a perceived injury. And it's important to note that's all it takes. Even if the brain perceives that the body's damaged in some way, we've injured ourselves in some way, it will trigger pain and physical symptoms. And so the second way that pain flares often happen is we perceive we've injured ourselves. And we want to be careful, right? If symptoms are progressing, of course, you can get them checked by a doctor. I want you to be responsible for your health. But in the coming couple of weeks after that perceived injury, I was gathering evidence that my symptoms were neuroplastic, and I realized, it was kind of coming and going. I was like, this isn't an injury. I didn't actually injure myself. I got scared I did. I got scared of some sensation in my body, and then I perceived I injured myself, and then I had this flare. And you can overcome them, but we got to lower the fear and dysregulation around this and understand that, a lot of times we just perceive we've injured ourselves when we're first healing. And even if there was an injury, it's important to give yourself messages of safety that your body will overcome that too. It's incredibly rare for us to injure ourselves in such a way that our body's not going to heal. We're designed to heal. We're really good at it. Evolutionarily, this is how we developed for good reason. We're not meant to be fragile. We're meant to get injured and recover. But maybe the flare you're having at this point could be a perceived injury. So really think about this a bit and start to gather the evidence to see if you can figure out if it is a perceived injury. Are the symptoms inconsistent? Did the exercise you do actually wasn't that intense, or there wasn't pain at the time, but there's a delayed onset? All these different pieces of evidence can show us, hey, our symptoms are actually neuroplastic. I'm safe right now. Number 3, resisting emotions. This is one of the most common reasons I see pain or symptom flares take place. Now, when I was about a year into recovery, I didn't have chronic pain anymore. I was using my body fully. I decided I was going to go and do my master's degree in social work, hence why I'm making these videos and why I do the work I do with clients. And a week before my master's started, all of a sudden, I just bent over and I got this burst of back pain. It was really intense. I mean, like, I was having a hard time standing back up. It was definitely overwhelming. And I was like, did I injure myself? And at that point, I was using my body lots. I thought maybe there was something wrong. And what I realized happened in the coming days is I had a lot of fear. I was really scared about starting my master's degree. It was terrifying. And so when a pain or symptom flare happens, they talk about this in emotional awareness and expression therapy, Howard Schubiner's model that he uses. They talk about walking it back. When a pain or symptom flare happens, one of the first things I do is I walk it back. What happened in the last couple of days? What happened in the last week or two? Or what's the stressful thing that's about to happen? Because we want to identify, am I resisting and not attending to difficult emotions and just trying to avoid them? Because if we resist emotions and avoid them taking place, it is likely to produce chronic pain and symptoms. That's just how we're built physiologically. And so I realized this at the time of my master's, and actually by allowing myself to feel my fear with a sense of safety, to feel it somatically, to process it, work it through, the flare faded within a couple of days. And so are you resisting emotions? Walk it back a bit. And it could be anything. It could be anger, sadness, hurt, guilt, shame, but it could also be positive things like love, joy, connection. We all have different fears around different emotions. And even though these emotions that we learned are dangerous, they're actually safe. And we need to somatically attend to them and process them. I have a full step-by-step guide for processing emotions that I'll link to the top, and I'll put it in the description below, because if you're having a pain or symptom flare, it might mean that you need to actually approach emotions in the body, experience them, feel safe with them, release them, and maybe even express them. And by doing this, it can have a real effect on our symptoms. Number 4, you're engaging in maladaptive coping mechanisms. Coping mechanisms is one of my favorite topics to discuss. I have all of these. They were first really identified by Dr. Schubiner. We're talking things like perfectionism, people-pleasing, excessive conscientiousness, excessive control. These coping mechanisms developed often in childhood or at some point in your life when you felt in danger. Maybe you faced adversity or trauma. And they developed innocently. We developed them as a way to cultivate safety. But over time, they become maladaptive. All these ways of coping actually keep our brain and nervous system in like a really high sympathetic, fight or flight, angry, anxious place, or a low dorsal vagal, shut down, despair, hopeless, helpless place. So they cause a lot of dysregulation over time. Now, these things need to be treated by using a mind-body approach. In my upcoming course, I have a whole module where we go over coping mechanisms and give you lots of strategies and techniques to help reduce these over time, to dial them back. Again, for myself, I don't want to sound hypocritical because they still exist in me. My brain learned these were adaptive and created safety, and so I can easily snap into them. But as I was first healing, I really dialed them back. really brought them in. But if you're having a pain or symptom flare, sometimes we fall into old patterns. And that's normal. I'm not here to judge you. I do this all the time still. But we fall into old patterns. And if we start to get dysregulated overall, then all of a sudden we have a pain or symptom flare take place. So in terms of walking it back, it's not just walking it back for difficult emotions, but it's also walking it back for these coping mechanisms. Are any of these taking place right now? One of the biggest triggers for my pain still to this day is my perfectionism and placing pressure on myself. I would say 8 or 9 times out of 10, that's what's taking place. Pressure's too high, self-criticism's too high, and I'm engaging in the world in this perfectionistic way. And I know that's a trigger for me. The only reason I realize that is when I'd have pain or symptom flares, I'd walk it back and be like, hey, is this taking place? And often it is. And so maybe you're having a flare right now. An important aspect is understanding, how am I engaging in the world? How am I living life? Is it through the lens of these coping mechanisms that's causing a lot of dysregulation? And if that's the case, to actually reduce the pain or symptom flare that you're experiencing, we need to learn to dial these back over time. Number 5, overall, your nervous system has become dysregulated. Now, I have a whole video, step by step, on 7 ways to regulate the nervous system. So I will link that to the top and also put it in the description below. So if you're feeling dysregulated, that's the video you want to check out. Start working away at this. When we have chronic pain or chronic symptoms, it is the result of our brain and nervous system being stuck in a state of survival. Sometimes this is due to resisting emotions. Sometimes it's coping mechanisms, but there's a lot of factors that can trigger and perpetuate this. And so understanding, are you in a fight or flight place? Whether you're nervous, anxious, hypervigilant, or maybe you're agitated, angry, fighting with life, or are you in a freeze or shutdown place? Is your nervous system starting to collapse? Is it starting to shut down, become immobilized, become hopeless, helpless, despairing, depressed? Again, any of these states are okay periodically, and are actually quite normal for us to go into. Fight, flight, freeze, shutdown. These are part of us. They are part of how our nervous system functions and help us survive. But if they're becoming prolonged and you're there for too long, a pain or symptom flare can be the result. And I see this a lot with people as they're healing, is they do all this work at the beginning of their healing to help themselves actually recover. But over time, as the pain or symptom fades, the motivation to do the healing work starts to fade. And again, I am not here to judge this. I have fallen into this pattern many a times over the years. But as our pain or symptoms fade, that motivation fades. And then all the things you were doing at the beginning of your healing to recover, you stop doing. We stop doing. We're like, we're good now. Our body's feeling good. We're completely fine. And then all of a sudden we start to become dysregulated and more dysregulated. And we let it drag on for, a few days, a few weeks, a few months. And then all of a sudden people have this huge flare take place and they feel like it's come out of nowhere, but it hasn't. It's just, being in a state of survival for a prolonged period of time is not natural for us. We're meant to have a flexible system, and we can do that by doing the work. It does take a lot of consistency and practice. I know this from experience. But when we talk about fight, flight, freeze, shutdown, dysregulated means your nervous system is now rigid. It's caught in these states in a prolonged way. And chronic pain and symptoms are the result of this. So walk it back. Think about, have I been in a dysregulated place for a prolonged period of time? Because this could be the cause of your flare. So thank you everyone for listening. Please put your questions or comments down below. Hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, and I will talk to you soon. Take care.